When is www needed and why? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. To dive right into this question that kind of represents a pet peeve of mine. Why do some website addresses have www and some don't? And why do some work with or without the www? Most of the time, www is optional. You can actually go with or without it. And ultimately, when it's optional, it's actually redundant. I see people taking the time to type or say www dot when it's, of course, completely unnecessary to actually get people to the URL they're trying to describe. Like I said, it's a pet peeve. Most of the time, you do not need www. Just don't. You don't need it. It's an artifact of how the internet has evolved. But today, most sites that you go to will work equally well with or without the www. I'll use access to askleo as an example here in a few minutes. Originally, what it boiled down to was that different servers would handle different protocols, would serve different functions. So by giving these different servers different names, you would route or connect to the server that was handling whatever it was you were trying to do. So you might see www.example.com as the World Wide Web server for the example.com domain. You might then also see mail.example.com for the mail server for that domain. It could be a completely different box, could be in a completely different location. But by giving it a different name, you were connecting to the one trying to do whatever it was you were trying to do. This was very common for ftp.example.com and ssh.example.com and smtp.example.com. POP3, you get the idea, right? There were a lot of these subdomains that were used to identify or route traffic depending on what it was you had configured your program to do. Now, of course, when there wasn't such a subdomain specified, some assumptions had to be made. In other words, if you specify example.com without anything in front of it, what should you do? Well, the default ended up becoming pretend it's www. Do the web server thing, serve pages for the World Wide Web. Mostly because that was by far, but is by far, the most common usage, the most common scenario where people are having to type or describe a URL as when they're sending people to a website or a specific web page. So by not specifying www, we simply assumed that, yep, you meant the web server to display web pages. And anything else, well, then you would end up specifying the mail dot or the pop3 dot or the ftp dot in front, if that even mattered anymore. In most cases, that doesn't necessarily even matter anymore. But it's more likely to matter for those protocols than it would for getting something off the web. The bottom line then is that there's all these different combinations of with and without www and ways that servers can react to it. Like I said, using askleo as an example, if you go to askleo.com without www, you land on askleo.com. If you go to www.askleo.com, you will land on askleo.com without the www. That is a decision that I made. It is a setting that I changed on my server that says whenever people come to me with the www, no, the standard askleo URL does not have a www in front of it. So that's what I've done. I've made without www the standard for askleo.com URLs. I could have made the opposite decision, and some sites do, right? If you go to, I don't know, some random site.com, you may land on www.somerandomsite.com because that's the decision they made. They made the opposite decision that I made. It's a perfectly valid decision. It's fine. It's actually, I mean, if you're going to make a decision, you should make either one of those two. Unfortunately, there are sites that didn't make a decision, right? If you go to one of those sites with the www, then you'll see in your address bar all of the pages you visit on that site are with the www. If you go to that same site without the www, then all of the URLs you see are without the www. The problem with that is that every page now has two distinct URLs. Every page can be reached either with or without the www. For you and me, it probably doesn't really matter. If all we're doing is visiting the site, it's not a big deal. It all works. The problem is, of course, for the site owner, because they're splitting, I guess I'd call it their SEO across two different URLs. There are other problems that can result from showing the same page under two completely distinct URLs, but it's not best practice by any stretch. And it's the not quite worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is to be completely inconsistent, right? You may or may not get switched to a version of the site with or without the www when you go visit the site. But internally, the links that they use, sometimes they do with, sometimes they do without. It's just internally inconsistent, and that could be really confusing. Again, for you and me who's just clicking on links, things just work. But for other things like search engines, it can be really, really confusing as to, okay, what should this page be referenced as? Is it www or is it without the www? So if you are a site owner, by all means, make a decision, one or the other, and then implement that decision so that all of your URLs are either with or without the www, and move on. Your search engine optimization will be better for it, and the rest of us will be a little bit less confused when we visit your site. Now, there is one interesting side effect or little known nuance that should never actually come into play these days. Because, like I said, the default now is without www. It's the same thing as saying with www. But it doesn't have to be. In reality, askleo.com and www.askleo.com could be two completely different websites with completely different content. Obviously, that would be really confusing and not something a website owner really ever needs to or wants to do, because we assume that they're the same. But at the technology level, at the origination of all of this technology when it started evolving years ago, those are two different sites. Those could be two different servers. In practice, thankfully, they're not. And like I say, in practice, www is redundant. In practice, so is HTTP. By that I mean, if you go to your web browser and you type in askleo.com, the right thing will happen. It will take you to the right place. You don't have to say https://www. Right? That's a bunch of information that you don't have to type, and you certainly don't have to say. You say askleo.com, the browser will do the right thing. Most websites should be able to handle that. HTTPS and HTTP should resolve to whatever the site owner wants you to come as. Normally, that'll be HTTPS. If you go to http://askleo.com, you'll end up on HTTPS. But these are all redundancies. The only thing that you need to worry about in your documentation, in your typing, in what you're describing to other people, is the domain name itself, the askleo.com part of a domain. You can ignore the www, and 99 times out of 100, you can completely ignore the HTTP or HTTPS, because the website itself will do the right thing and have you land on its preferred method of connecting. I hope that helps. I hope that helps reduce the amount of typing and syllables we all have to pronounce whenever we're describing a URL to somebody. For updates, for related links, for your comments and more, visit askleo.com/2019. I'm Leo Notenboom. This is askleo.com, not necessarily https://www.askleo.com. No, that'll work too.